Hi, my name is Firas, and today I will show you how to do the last type of paneling that we talk about, and in today's lecture specifically we're going to talk about the subdivision. If you remember from the last lectures we had, we dealt with the cladding concept, and we did this tutorial here as my YouTube channel. And we did cladding, which is the very basic concept of adaptive component, curtain wall based, and we do the paneling with the dynamo. And then we did some skin or structure, some skin or some skeleton, which is basically very similar to the clad, but there is no paneling inside. So just like beams and columns. And then we jumped to mix those two things in these videos. Now we need to finish the third type, which is the subdivision, which is basically taking the single panel that we have and then we work on dividing it into another smaller units. By the way, this is a very complicated topic, and it can go to different methods, but I'm going to just simplify it and start to divide the basic units into more than one unit. And specifically, we're going to do a more adaptive component. So if you have a look, if you're trying to struggle and unable to understand what's happening, I've posted this in my Facebook page. It's architecture and visualization, and that last post, I was right. I was sharing this post, which is from Arc2O. Very lovely page. You can have a look at it. They posted this and I shared it, and it's this Burj Al Bahar. It's in United Arab Emirates, one of the most beautiful, iconic building here. And this beautiful building, it's if you try to look at it, that's basically it from outside. It's two towers actually, and if you can analyze that quickly, you can see that this is the perfect example to illustrate what I was trying to deliver as information about how to deal with paneling. If you look at this layer, the glass and the mullions around it, it's just a basic clad, and that's the I explained in my first tutorial. While this hexagonal skeleton or skin is just nothing, like that's just like a mullions or whatever you want to call it, and there is nothing inside. That's the skeleton or a skin. And then the subdivision came here, which is one panel's triangular one and then divided into a smaller units. So if I return back and I just have this, so that's really great. So those three things that I was trying to talk about, that's the clad, see the glass and the mullions around it, and that's the skin or the skeleton, and then finally the subdivision here. And that's the stage of work is the form which we spend it create by loft and extrude. So that's form. So you start up with the form, and then you start to add whatever you want from those three or all of them to get this shape. And so subdivision, again, if we come back to Revit, it could be very complicated, and it's very annoying actually if it doesn't goes well with you. In today's example, I will start with the previous work that I did. So if I opened this in Dynamo, it's a basic tower that I had in the couple of videos that I've done, and let me just run that quickly. So that's the object, and that's the tower. And I ended by making this as a full solid, or solid by loft actually. So before I go ahead and show you paneling and dividing that, I need to show you the previous method, so that we depend on topo surface or topology, sorry. So that's the solid, that's the node for the solid, and then we added topology dot faces, if you remember, and then the face has been changed or taken from it the surfaces, and then we use the drop list, and then we started to use on the surface use panel quad, and we go ahead and divide it and all that stuff. So I depended on this couple of like 4 or 5 videos actually, and show you how to use the solid, or how to get the surface from the solid and change that solid, or take from that solid actually the faces, and then from the faces you take the surfaces, and the surfaces you deal with it by doing the paneling for it. So if you want to do paneling, actually there is several ways. So let me show you this way. So I'll start up by the file that I show you. So this is just a solid by Loft. I'll run that thing. It's really good idea to keep that into manual, as long as you are pushing elements from Dynamo to Revit. It would be really smart not to make it on automatic, because it's gonna cause a serious delay. So keep it on manual. If you're working on the Dynamo environment, you can just keep it on the automatic. Now let me add some new thing here. Let's go for a poly surface, and that one, if you have a look, it's gonna take your solid and get actually the poly surface out of it. So that's the input, it's the solid, and it's gonna give you a poly surface. So let's run that, and by creating the poly surface for this solid, it's actually gonna make 3 surfaces, which is one for this curvature, and one for the upper face, and one for the lower face. But the problem in this, let's open that. This one is basically the whole thing. So the whole surfaces, the 3 of them, which is the upper one and the lower one, and the base. Yeah. So we don't want that, as we're not going to divide the top and the bottom surfaces. So we need to get rid of this poly surface into normal surfaces. So in this case, I'm gonna add again poly surface dot surface. So this is gonna take that poly surface and allow me, or to divide it into the normal surfaces that I need, which is technically here 1, 2, and 3. So let's have a look if we are going okay. See, that's number 3. That's mean so far so good. So just test that. So let's select this one, which is the cap here. This one is the top, and this one is this, like the one, that the surface that I need to divide. Now be careful. So if you click on those and you didn't see things, it might be a good idea to go back to cancel the preview out of those, and that allow you to see those better. And that's again number 2. That's the one that I want. And remember, all the division you see here, I just add them for the modeling sake. So you can go ahead and turn them off, and those dudes. So in the actual understanding of surface work, that's what you have in Dynamo. That's how Dynamo think about it, and that's what you need to divide. That's the surface you are going to divide. So let's do that. And again, I'm gonna use panel quad, and it's really easy. I'm gonna take this guy here, the surface, and probably I'm gonna need 10 here and 20 here. So that's the 10, and that's the 20. Now if we divide that, it's gonna make that into a smaller surfaces, and it's 10 in the U direction and then 20 in the V. Don't go ahead and add too much, even the value that I added. If you have not really a good machine, you can go by a smaller, and I'll really advise you to do so. Anyway, let's have a look. So again, when we divide that, you can see that a mess is a mess. So let's divide that surface, and divide that surface, and divide that surface. So in order to understand, it's 3 surface. It doesn't recognize that we want only this one, and that's normal. So let's push that aside, and let's pick only one surface, which is the second one that I selected here. And I'm gonna go list dot index, sorry, get item at index. So I will take this here and I will give that to that one, okay? And the one that I need is the second, so I'll just write number 2 here. Now before, why we just turn off this. Now we run. In this case, I'm gonna use, or I'm gonna deal with the second surface, which is the one that I need, the vertical one, and Dynamo will ignore the surface 0 and surface 1, and that's actually what happened here. So that's technically what we need. So again, I'm gonna go back. See, that's turning those off. That means we selected just this guy, and you see those empties, you know, the caps. That's technically the right thing to be done. And now, if you look by accident, when I select the panel, I can see there is 2, you know, surfaces. One, the NURBS one that we selected right now, and the other one is what we get, or the resulted one from the panel quad, the divided one again. So just off this one or cancel the preview for this one. That's what you want, you know, the paneled one. So that's the realistic one, you know. You see that smooth curvy one, you're never gonna get it until you increase those insanely high. So again, that's for the testing purpose. You can go ahead and increase those carefully after you finish, you know, the work. So now we manage to divide that, and it's having our panel and having our points ready. So now you gotta go here and open into Revit and open in family, and this family would go to English metric system, and I will pick adaptive component. That's my adaptive component here, the metric generic adaptive model adaptive. So it's a point base. It's not the curtain wall base that we use in the cladding. So I'm gonna take points, and that's number 1, that's the second, that's the third, that's the fourth. It's good to remember how you added the points, so the sequence of them is really important. Now they are just normal points. It's not really enough, so you have to select them and make them adaptive. So that's number 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, make a good memory of those. You need to remember how they, you know, actually been created, or the sequence of them. I'll go referencing, and I'll just make sure that the 3D snapping and chain is on, and click 1, 2, 3, 4, and we end. So following those, and right click and cancel. Follow the sequence you create. Now if I just extrude and send it, it will be work perfectly for the normal, if you can consider that as a clad, because it's just one panel. Now, in order to create the subdivision, imagine that this is the surface, and then you need to create another surface inside, or this is the geometry or extrusion or whatever, and then you have to create another object. So it's just multiple objects, or more than one division in the same panel. And that's what we call it, why we call it subdivision. So we need to divide that again, or make another object inside. But before, it would be very wise to add some constraints or some dimensions. So I'll start from the point to 1, and add this one to this one, the fourth to the first. And now that's important because actually paneling in Revit and even Dynamo need to understand what type of dimension is this and what type of dimension is this. So if you go ahead and select this one and go add or create parameter to it, let's assume that this is the length. And if you put it as a type, now you kind of killing the whole thing because it isn't fixed for the whole panels. And if you don't believe me, you look at here and you see some panels are really big. Those are especially in the top bar, and some of them are really small, which is the one really need neck in the lower part of this object. So it would be goes for instance, of course, because each panel will have its own length as a dimension. That makes sense. And then you need to make it, might be new for you, so you go for making it a reporting parameter. So Revit will actually can extract the actual value of that and store it with it, and then use it to create something else or anything else that depend on it. So you must actually make that an instance, and you must make it reporting. That's really important, that step. And now I'm going to repeat that thing here and go W and go instance and reporting and go OK. So you can go ahead and add here and here, but I don't really need to do that because I'm pretty sure that in my geometry here, the left side and the right side of each panel will be the same, so I don't want to bother actually. So now I'm gonna add 4 points, and remember that's 1, 2, so that's 1, and that's 2, that's 3, and that's 4. Now those guys are just points, and here they call them reference point or whatever the naming. Those guys, the one have the planes, are adaptive points. So those are the one actually going to change to suit the geometry or the subdivision or the paneling you did in Dynamo. Those guys have to follow them. If you make them adaptive, they're going to be really not a good idea in my point of view, because that means you are creating 8 panel or 8-point panel. I just need a 4-point panel. I don't need more than the term panel is defined by how many adaptive points you have, not by the number of points you have in it. So I'll keep those normal reference points. So now I'm going to add dimension. So I'm going to add one here, and remember from the point to the line, not the other way around. So the point will follow the line or the reference line. Now that guy here is technically part of this. Okay, let's make this an offset. Okay, so whatever the number, this one, you can just add another parameter here, and let's call it offset from L. Okay, again, it couldn't be a type because the panel itself will be getting smaller and bigger, and basically depending on where you're going to put it in the size of the subdivision, the paneling you have in Dynamo or Revit. So type is not the thing you need. You have to make it instance, just an instance, and that's what we need. And I'm going to go OK, and then in the family type, I will go and define how much it is, and let's go and let's assume it's L over 10. So I'll hit OK, so it will be 1 over 10 out of the value of that. So now I can select all those guys and assign that parameter to them. So this point and this point will be over 1 over the 10 of the whole thing, and this will be 8 of them. Now we do the same thing for this. So that's 1, and that's the second. And again, from the point to the reference line, and oops, and now this will be part of this guy, which is W. So So this guy will be that will be L, part of L, and that will be part of W. So create a parameter, and I will call it again offset from W and its instance, and I will define its value from the reporting W parameter. So yeah, sorry, it's W dash 10 or divided on 10. Now I'm gonna select those three, the remaining, with control, and I'm gonna assign the W for them. Oops, I made a mistake. We gotta assign the offset for them, sorry. Something is not going okay, so this one, okay. This dude, beautiful. Now this guy, oh, this guy is wrong, see? Accidentally I created two, so get rid of this naughty one. And make sure you're selecting the point and the line, the reference line, and then do it. Perfect. Now that's what we have. Now again, lines here, reference actually, and it's another chain and it's another 3D snapping, and you're gonna start from this again, 1, and then 2, and then that's 3, and then that's 4, and then that's 5, and then you close. By cancel, I will go ahead and save that. Let me call it just frames. Let me call it adaptive component. It's a point base, and let's go 4 points because it's 4 point base panel, and it's just the frame for it. It's not really ready, sorry. So not ready. So I'm gonna save that. Now I can go ahead and select that one, just simply extrude it, and go here, change this into a dimension, and then add a parameter here. Let me call it H2, and I will keep it as a type because it's gonna affect all the panels in the same geometry. I need to control them manually, and the change that I'm gonna do once for one panel, it should be reflected back to the whole geometry. And remember, you need to control that manually for all, so that's why you have to keep it type. And then you need to select this guy, and then again create a form or solid, and change that, and then select it, and then add a parameter. Let me call it H, and go, it's a type again, and I'm gonna make this guy maybe I don't know, 1000 or whatever. Hit apply and keep that, I don't know, keep it or just change it to 3000 or whatever you want. So now we go back and then save again, or save as, sorry. And again, it's adaptive component, and it's 4 points, and let's say it's 2 extrusion. Okay, that's it. Let's save that, and then we need to load that into the project file. And I'm gonna suggest, to add that. I'm just gonna cancel this, go to the 3D of that file. Now back to Dynamo again, and basically all we need is to make adaptive component. We've done that a couple of times so far. So based, point based, and you need a family type, selector, and you go ahead and pick whatever you created, which is this 4 points and then 2 extrude, and connect that, and then go ahead and run. Remember that it's gonna depend on how many you add here as a segments for the U and V and what type of machine you have. So now that's basically what we should have, but it's obviously been flipped. Okay, you either go and add reverse function or flip inside Dynamo, or go and do the lazy one, which I like, and I'm gonna turn off the levels, and so I can be selecting only the adaptive components. Go back and flip it manually, and everyone will be happy. Now we are really in business. Probably you need to add some shadow here, so you can see that the depth you're gonna resulted of those two subdivided, or the panels that you add. I can select one and go and edit the type, and I can see that the 1 and that's the 3. You know, that's because they are typed, so you can see them here. And the 1, when you change it here, let's say the 6, it's gonna affect every single unit that you added in this tower. When you change that, remember, it really need to recalculate. So you can see that we've done actually a nice example of how we deal with this, and it could be really a good way to deal with this a very basic subdivision for our panels, and it's basically offset subdivision. So if I go here, I can just turn off the points, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, see, that's better though, because this point is kind of annoying. So that could be it, for this type of paneling.